So yes, the US remains to be the backer, the enabler of the Israeli genocide as we speak, but this is changing.
You use the word genocide. That's, of course, being tested at the International Court of Justice, absolutely and vehemently denied by Israel. You talk of the scale of civilian losses. Now, some of the figures obviously have come from the Hamas-run health ministry. The Israelis dispute some of the specifics.
Hello, everybody. So let's talk about another episode of BBC HARDtalk program. Remember the same program and the same presenter, Stephen Sackur, who had gone to Guyana to speak to its president and given lecture on the newfound wealth in that country. He was almost implying as if to suggest you have got the wealth, but are you sure you are able to handle it? It was cringeworthy and touch racist as well. You've seen that video, right? You can see the video here as well. Now, in the latest episode, Stephen Sackur is speaking to the Palestinian ambassador in London, Husam Zomlot. Now, Husam Zomlot, you have seen flying the flag for Palestinian cause. The person himself has lost many more relatives in the current Israeli genocide in Gaza, and he's been literally the face of Palestine on British TV outlets. Stephen Sackur is aware of his personal losses. You'd be dumb to think that he is not aware of that. He's aware of that, and that comes across clearly in that half-an-hour program, that he is aware of his personal losses. And he's also aware, because he works for the BBC, he's also aware of the large-scale death and destruction caused by Israeli military in the last 9 months. In fact, he starts his program like that. He starts his program by saying that the Israeli military offensive has lasted for 9 months. He says that. But not once does he mention the death and disaster caused by that Israeli military offensive. I would have expected Stephen Sackur to at least mention the official figure of those people who have been killed and the people who have been rendered homeless and injured. He doesn't mention all that, because mentioning that would be counterproductive to the interest of Israel.
Welcome to HARDtalk. I'm Stephen Sackur. Israel's military assault on Gaza has lasted almost 9 months, and there seems little prospect of it ending anytime soon.
As the program goes along, Stephen Sackur asked a subsequent question, and the question was that, okay, Israel is giving indication of slowing down its operation and almost ending its offensive in Rafah, where the Israel's rogue regime has killed many people. In fact, even beheaded children out there. You have seen that. But then Stephen still avoids mentioning anything that could portray Israel in poor light. It comes across as a desperate attempt to portray Israel in a good light.
If there are chinks of light, perhaps one is that the Israelis say that their intensive assault on Rafah, with all of the refugees, the displaced people who are in Rafah, that is coming to an end. And at the other end of the strip, there are some reports that the desperate humanitarian situation in parts of the north of Gaza isn't quite as bad as it was.
Yeah, but the Israelis want to turn Gaza into an open killing field for as long as it takes. So they might lower the intensity, having killed and maimed 120,000, mostly women and children, having literally decimated 70% of Gaza's homes, 80% of Gaza's schools, 90% of Gaza's hospitals, and 100% of Gaza's universities. And now they are talking about low intensity. Unfortunately, what Israel means here is a continuation of the same atrocious aggression, but through different means. That's it.
But Ambassador, being a seasoned diplomat and who has been engaging with media quite regularly, he uses that opportunity to bust that hidden agenda of the BBC and mentions the death and destruction caused by Israel. Midway through the program, Stephen Sackur also mentions Hamas-run health ministry. I mean, that's a game that BBC has played right from the day one. And this is all started after BBC faced the flag from the Zionists as to why you are not describing Hamas as terrorist organization. Because the BBC editorial guidelines say that they would not refer to anybody as terrorist because they believe one person's terrorist being other person's freedom fighter. So BBC believes in the philosophy of not addressing anybody as terrorist. I mean, during my time, we used to call militants at best, but not refer to anybody terrorist. But because the pressure was so much of this by these Zionists, not from Israel. I don't think BBC cares about Israel. The Zionists at home, the Israeli lobby that's working day and night in the UK. So the BBC started using Hamas-run health ministry in almost every reporting. And this is criminal, right? This is not even insensitive. This is criminal. To say that 40,000 people, you're literally casting a doubt on the brutal, large-scale mass murder of the Palestinian women and children and babies. You're literally casting doubt on the authenticity of those figures. Because the moment you say Hamas-run health ministry, you are sowing the seeds of doubt in the minds of ordinary people that, look, these figures may not be true. And that's exactly what Stephen Sackur does. You don't mention, when you mention that, on 7th of October, 1,200 Israelis were killed, you don't attribute that figures to Netanyahu-run health ministry or Netanyahu-run X, Y, and Z ministry. You don't do that. You say it with conviction as if you were there to witness it, even though that figure was originally put at 1,400, then 1,300, then 1,200, and God knows whether, even 1,200 is authentic or not. Nobody knows that. But Israelis are known for peddling, fake propaganda. Here, those being killed are happening in front of our eyes. And yet, you are so cautious that you don't miss an opportunity to attribute that number to Hamas-run health ministries, as if to say nobody has died. But because everybody is reporting, so let's call it's a claim made by Hamas-run health ministry.
You talk of the scale of civilian losses. Now, some of the figures obviously have come from the Hamas-run health ministry. The Israelis dispute some of the specific figures.
That's really, really makes you angry. And it makes me more angry because some of those people indulging in that propaganda have been my former colleagues. And then he refers to some leaked emails of Hamas leaders, which have been published by, according to him, Wall Street Journal. Now, Stephen himself says that he cannot verify the authenticity of those emails, and yet he grills the Palestinian diplomat for answers.
What we heard in leaked emails purportedly sent from Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas inside Gaza, to Hamas colleagues in Doha, what we heard were some pretty extraordinary words. These were published in the Wall Street Journal. We can't verify them independently ourselves, but nonetheless, the report suggested Sinwar had said the scale of these civilian losses in Gaza should be seen as necessary sacrifices. How did you respond to that phrase?
I haven't seen such leaked letters, and I'm not going to comment on this. All what I can tell you is that there is nothing that justifies the mass murder of children. You're talking about more than 15,000 children. Never before in the history of mankind such atrocities took place in real time, right in front of the world. Everybody is receiving all these images in their screen. So I don't want to engage in something I haven't seen, but should such...
But it really is important to understand the mindset, both of the leaders of Hamas, because Hamas is a key protagonist in this conflict.
These are the emails that, according to him, have been published by, not BBC, by an American publication. And he himself is saying that he cannot vouch for its authenticity. And yet he goes on to embarrass and demand answers from the Palestinian ambassador. And towards the end, the moment Palestinian ambassador mentions genocide, you can see it just rattles Stephen. It rattles BBC presenter.
I'm sure you're following what is happening in the US. I mean, also, there is the other side of the coin. I mean, unprecedented change in the public opinion, particularly among the youth and all communities. The Black Lives Matter, the Jewish communities, all what have you. You've seen the incumbents, which is historic. The first time in the US since 1968. These things happen only once in a few generations. And when we follow the US and when we go back to history, we remember that the US was the latecomer, the lastcomer, the Reagan administration, of being anti-apartheid in South Africa. But then they were literally pressured by their own people and by the rest of the international community, and that is what is happening now. So yes, the US remains to be the backer, the enabler of the Israeli genocide as we speak, but this is changing.
You use the word genocide. That's, of course, being tested at the International Court of Justice, absolutely and vehemently denied by Israel.
Surely he wasn't dutifully bound to mention that line. He wasn't. But as I said, that he wasn't scared. I don't think that any BBC journalist scared of the reactions or pushback from Israel. And also, it's not BBC who is saying that. It's the victim, one of the parties who is being victimized, who is being brutalized by Israeli army. That party is quoting the number, and that party is saying that that's genocide. And it's not just him. You have seen the special rapporteur of United Nations, Francesca Albanese. She has said that what is happening in Gaza has crossed the threshold of genocide. You have seen the applications being filed in ICC, International Criminal Court, for an arrest warrant against Netanyahu and his defense minister. You have seen three judgments by International Court of Justice. So why would you react so aggressively to the mention of genocide? That beggars belief. I'll leave that to you to decide, to make up your mind as to what you think of the latest episode of the BBC HARDtalk presented by Stephen Sackur. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.